Hello everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Jamie. When my fiancée stayed to break up in front of her friends, she had no idea how I would respond. My fiancée, Vanessa, and I met during our last year at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. By the time we graduated, we'd already gone out for coffee twice. We began dating months after graduation. I began working in a mid-sized healthcare company. The pay was decent and the benefits were solid. Vanessa went into retail management. She got hired as an assistant manager at a clothing store downtown that catered to young professionals. She worked long hours and dealt with difficult customers. She complained about it sometimes, about entitled shoppers, about unrealistic sales targets, about how her feet hurt from standing all day, but she seemed reasonably content. She was good at what she did. Within a year, she got promoted to store manager. Our relationship settled into a comfortable rhythm. We talked about moving in together, but decided to hold on for a while. We did a lot of things together and talked about the future in general terms at first. As we approached our 4th anniversary, those conversations became more concrete. I started thinking seriously about proposing. I'd always imagined that when the time came, I'd know. And I did. I woke up one Sunday morning, saw Vanessa, who came over for the weekend, making coffee in the kitchen, and thought to myself that I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I started planning shortly after that. The first thing I did was research engagement rings. I knew nothing about diamonds or jewelry. I spent hours reading articles, watching YouTube videos, and learning about the 4Cs: cut, clarity, color, and carat. I set a budget of $1,000. That felt reasonable given my salary and savings. I didn't want to go into debt for a ring. I visited 3 different jewelers over the course of 2 weeks. I asked questions and compared options. I tried to find something that balanced quality, appearance, and price. Eventually, I settled on something. The jeweler assured me it was genuine and well-made. He said the size was very typical for engagements in my price range. I trusted him. I felt good about the choice. The next step was planning the actual proposal. Vanessa had always told me she didn't want anything overly public or showy. She valued intimacy over spectacle. So I planned something private and meaningful. I made a reservation at a restaurant with a rooftop dining area. The rooftop overlooked the city skyline and was strung with soft Edison bulbs. I requested a corner table, asked for minimal interruption from the waitstaff, and confirmed they could help coordinate the timing of the proposal without making it a big production. The evening itself was perfect. We had dinner. She ordered the salmon, I got the ribeye, and we talked and laughed like we always did. I was nervous, but I didn't think she noticed. After dessert, I stood up, moved beside her, and got down on one knee. Her hands went to her mouth immediately. Her eyes widened. I kept it simple. I told her I loved her, that I couldn't imagine my life without her, and that I wanted to spend the rest of my life making her happy. I asked if she would marry me. She said yes before I even finished opening the ring box. She pulled me up and kissed me. The few other couples on the rooftop clapped. It felt surreal and perfect. She looked at the ring under the lights, turning her hand to see how it caught the glow. She told me it was beautiful. She hugged me again, tighter this time. Then, almost immediately, she pulled out her phone. She took photos of the ring on her hand from multiple angles. She texted her friends. She snapped a selfie of the 2 of us with the ring visible in the frame. I didn't mind. I understood she was excited and wanted to share the moment. We stayed on the rooftop for another hour, just talking and taking all in. When we finally left, she was still glowing. The next morning, she posted a photo on Instagram. It was a simple shot, her hand resting on a table, the ring in focus. The caption read, "Forever starts now." Within an hour, the post had over 200 likes. The comments section filled up with congratulations from friends, family, and acquaintances. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for us. For the first few days after the proposal, everything felt right. Vanessa wore the ring constantly. She'd glance at it throughout the day, smiling. She talked about wedding ideas, nothing concrete, just general thoughts about venues and guest lists, and whether we do a big ceremony or something smaller. I felt relieved. She accepted me wholly. But then, about 5 days after the proposal, something shifted. Vanessa had spent the afternoon with 2 of her close friends. They'd gone out for brunch and then spent a few hours at one of the friends' apartments. Vanessa came to my place around 6 that evening. She seemed quieter than usual, less bubbly. When I asked how her day was, she said it was fine, but her tone was flat. Later that night, while we were sitting on the couch watching TV, she brought up the ring. She asked, casually at first, how much I'd spent on it. I told her. There was a pause. Then she asked why I hadn't gone bigger. She said she'd been looking at engagement rings online with her friends and noticed that a lot of them were over a carat. Some were a carat and a half. She asked if I'd considered something in that range. I explained that I'd chosen the ring based on overall quality, not just size. I also mentioned that I'd worked within a budget that made sense for where we were financially. I wasn't apologetic, but I wasn't defensive either. I just explained my reasoning. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't satisfied. She didn't say anything else about it that night, but the conversation left a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Over the next week, I started noticing changes in her behavior. She began responding to my text messages later than usual, sometimes 2 or 3 hours later. Her replies were shorter and less engaged. She started posting things on social media that felt pointed. One of the captions read, "Never settle for anything less than you deserve." These weren't the kinds of things she usually posted. Her Instagram had always been casual. This new tone felt different. It felt like a message, even if it wasn't explicitly directed at anyone. I didn't confront her about it. I didn't ask what the post meant or why she was being distant. I just observed while being calm. But internally, I felt uneasy. I could sense her pulling away, and I had a growing suspicion that her friends had said something to her that had shifted her perspective. 2 weeks after the proposal, she sent me a text one evening while I was still at work. It read, "Can you come to the cafe near my place? We need to talk." My stomach dropped when I saw it. "We need to talk" is universally recognized as a precursor to something bad. But I didn't let myself spiral into worst-case scenarios. I replied that I'd be there in 20 minutes. I left work a little early, got in my car, and drove to the small cafe near her apartment that she'd mentioned. It was a place we'd been to a handful of times before. When I walked in, I spotted Vanessa immediately. She was sitting at a table near the large front window with some of her friends. The 3 of them had drinks in front of them already. They were relaxed and casual, like they'd been there for a while. The moment I approached the table, the mood shifted. Vanessa's smile faded. The friends were quiet, but didn't leave. They stayed seated, settling back into their chairs like they were audience members about to watch a performance. I realized pretty quickly that this wasn't a coincidence. They were here intentionally. This was staged. I pulled out the empty chair across from Vanessa and sat down. No one said anything for a moment. I asked if anyone wanted me to grab them anything from a counter, trying to break the tension. Vanessa shook her head. I went to the counter and ordered a black coffee. When I came back to the table, the silence was even heavier. Vanessa started with small talk. She asked how work was. I said it was fine. She asked if I was tired. I said a little. The conversation felt forced and awkward, like we were strangers making obligatory pleasantries. Then, after some minutes of this, she straightened in her seat, folded her hands on the table, and her tone became serious. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking over the past couple of weeks. She said that maybe things between us had moved too fast, that maybe we'd rushed into the engagement without really being sure, that she wasn't certain this was working the way it should. I didn't interrupt. I just listened, keeping my face neutral, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup. She continued. She said she cared about me, but that she didn't know if we were aligned with each other. She said she needed to be honest about her feelings. Then she reached up and slowly pulled the engagement ring off her finger. She placed it on the table between us, right next to the sugar packets. She looked at me and said, "You're a good guy, but this ring doesn't even look real and befitting to me. I can't wear this." I heard a muffled giggle from one of her friends. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the other holding her phone, angled slightly toward us. She was recording. For a moment, I just sat there. Not because I was shocked or hurt. I'd already suspected something like this was coming based on how she'd been acting. But because I wanted to make absolutely sure I didn't react the way they were expecting me to. They wanted a scene. They wanted me to get defensive, to argue, to beg, to make this into a dramatic moment they could dissect and share later. I wasn't going to give them that. Instead, I took a slow breath, looked down at the ring on the table. Then I looked back up at Vanessa. I gave a small, calm smile. Then I reached across the table, picked up the ring, and slipped it into my pocket. I said quietly and evenly, "Done. Enjoy your freedom." Then I stood up, walked over to the counter, pulled out my wallet, and paid for my coffee. The barista asked if everything was okay. I said it was fine and thanked her. Then I walked out the door. I didn't look back. I didn't say anything else. I just left. Behind me, I heard the scrape of a chair and one of her friends' voices, confused and slightly panicked. "Wait, is he seriously just walking out?" I got in my car, started the engine, and drove home. The entire drive, I felt numb. When I got back to my apartment, I sat on the couch in silence for a long time, staring at nothing in particular. The next few days were quiet. I didn't text Vanessa. I didn't call. I didn't check her social media. I went completely silent. I blocked her friends on Instagram and Facebook. I didn't need to see whatever narrative they were constructing or how they were framing what had happened. My new activity consists of going to work, coming home, and going to the gym. I kept myself busy with routine and structure. 2 days after the cafe incident, I took the ring back to the jeweler. I walked in with a small black box in my jacket pocket. The same man who'd sold it to me was behind the counter. He recognized me immediately. I told him, briefly and without unnecessary detail, that the engagement had ended and that I wanted to return the ring. He was understanding. He didn't ask for the full story. He inspected the ring to make sure it was in the same condition I'd purchased it in, which it was. He explained that their return policy included a 15% restocking fee, which I'd agreed to when I bought it. He processed the return and handed me a check. I'd lost a couple of dollars, but I didn't care. Keeping the ring would have been worse. I thanked him and left. I didn't tell Vanessa I'd returned it. She didn't need to know, and I didn't owe her an explanation. For the first few days after the cafe meeting, I think Vanessa expected me to reach out, to try to talk things through, to fight for the relationship. When I didn't, the silence must have started to feel heavier than she anticipated. About 5 days in, she posted a photo on Instagram. It was a picture of her and a friend of hers at some trendy brunch spot, mimosas in hand, both smiling. The caption read, "Moving forward and living my best life." I didn't react. I didn't like it. I didn't comment. I didn't even look at it for more than a second. A week after the cafe incident, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. It read, "Hey, when are we going to the jeweler? I didn't mean to offend you." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed a reply, "There's no jeweler. It's over. I already took the ring back for a refund." I hit send and set my phone down to continue what I was doing. Within 3 minutes, my phone started ringing. Vanessa's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called again, then again, for times in the span of 10 minutes. I let every call go to voicemail. Then the voice notes started coming in. The first one was 2 minutes long. She said she didn't understand why I was being like this. She said we needed to talk because I was overreacting. The second one was longer, and it came hours later when I didn't reply to the last one. She apologized. She said she'd been overwhelmed and confused. She said her friends had gotten into her head and made her doubt things she shouldn't have doubted. She said she still loved me and that we could fix this if I'd just talk to her. The third voice note was almost 3 minutes long and came the next day. She was crying. She said she'd made a mistake. She said the ring comment was stupid and that she didn't mean it the way it came out. She said she wanted to work through this, that relationships go through hard moments, and that giving up wasn't the answer. I listened to the first few seconds of each one, then skipped ahead or deleted them. The text messages came next. Long paragraphs, apologies and explanations, promises that things would be different, pleads for me to meet with her so we can talk face to face. I didn't respond to any of it. After 3 days of silence from me, I heard through a mutual friend that Vanessa had been asking about me. When friends asked about the breakup, I kept it simple. We weren't compatible, it didn't work out, and I was fine. Most people didn't push for details. But over time, a few who knew both of us found out what had happened. Word travels in circles of mutual friends, especially when something dramatic goes down in a public place with witnesses. The general reaction wasn't in Vanessa's favor. I would find out that a couple of people had called Vanessa out for being shallow. Someone else said she'd thrown away a solid relationship over something materialistic. Another mutual friend reached out to me directly, saying he respected how I'd handled the situation and that walking away with dignity was the right move. I appreciated the support, but I didn't dwell on it. I wasn't interested in turning this into a public referendum on who was right and who was wrong. Around this same time, I noticed that one of Vanessa's friends had unfollowed Vanessa on Instagram. I have no idea what happened between them, but I wasn't surprised. Friendships built on shallow validation and drama don't tend to last when the novelty wears off. In the weeks and months following the breakup, I focused entirely on myself. I threw myself into my work. I took on additional projects at my job, volunteered to help with any task available, and made myself indispensable to my team. About 4 months after the breakup, I was promoted. It came with a raise and more responsibility. I accepted immediately. I felt lighter. Not because I was glad the relationship had ended. I genuinely cared about Vanessa and had pictured a future with her. But because I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's doubts and judgments anymore. Every now and then, Vanessa would try to reach out to me, but I kept telling her that I've moved on. I'd hear through my own friends that Vanessa was still asking about me. I never felt tempted to reach back out. I'd said everything I needed to say when I walked out of that cafe. There was nothing left to discuss. Looking back now, I think the hardest part of the whole experience wasn't the breakup itself. Breakups happen. People grow apart, realize they're not compatible, and move on. That's life. The hard part was realizing that the person I thought I knew, someone I'd spent for years with, someone I'd supported through difficult times, someone I'd planned a future with, had been so easily swayed by outside voices. The ring wasn't the problem. The price wasn't the problem. The problem was that Vanessa had allowed her friends to convince her that my effort, my thoughtfulness, and my love weren't enough. That I wasn't enough. And once someone decides that no amount of explaining, defending, or proving will change their mind, I'm not angry at her. I don't wish anything bad for her. But I'm also not interested in revisiting something that was clearly built on a foundation that wasn't as solid as I thought. Sometimes people test you without even realizing they're doing it. They push boundaries to see how you'll react, how much you'll bend, how far you'll go to keep them happy. And sometimes, the best response is no response at all. Walking away doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're refusing to participate in a situation where the outcome is already rigged against you. Silence isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's self-respect. When Vanessa took off that ring and told me it wasn't good enough, she wasn't just criticizing the ring. She was telling me that I wasn't good enough. That my love, my effort, my commitment, none of it measured up to whatever standard her friends had convinced her to hold me to. And instead of scrambling to prove her wrong, instead of begging her to reconsider or trying to justify my choices, I chose to believe what she was telling me and leave. That calm exit, that refusal to engage in the drama she and her friends had orchestrated, preserved something in me that arguing never would have. It reminded me that my value isn't determined by someone else's opinion. It never was. My worth isn't tied to the carat weight of a diamond or the approval of people who measure relationships by Instagram standards. Sometimes silence hits harder than shouting. When someone tests your worth, the best answer is to walk away, not to prove them wrong, but to remind yourself you were never the problem. I don't know where Vanessa is now. I don't check her social media. I don't ask mutual friends about her. I've moved on in every sense of the word. But I do know this. I'm better off. I'm happier. I'm more confident. I'm surrounded by people who value me for who I am, not for what I can provide or how impressive I look on paper. And I didn't have to raise my voice, make a scene, or compromise my dignity to get here. I just had to know when to walk away.